Hi there. So many of us have lost our connection with the moon and the moon cycles. And really, our lives are governed by the moon. Look how much it influences what's going on planet Earth. Anyway, I lost connection with the moon, and I was so delighted when I met Masami Covey at a conference earlier this year. I really hit it off. When she told me what she does, I was like, well, I have to get you on the podcast. We need to talk about this. So, welcome, Masami.
Oh, thank you so much. I've been looking forward to connecting with you and talking about the moon and the menopause and post-menopause and all the cycles of things.
So excited. And this podcast is going to be released on a special day too, the new moon. So that's exciting. And Masami, you've got such an interesting background, right? You've done all this nutrition, you're a yoga therapist. You grew up in Japan you're in a mixed family, and now you're living in the US. And I just find you so interesting. But when did you get connected to the moon? Because has it always been in your life, or is it something new?
It's one of those things that I touched upon, but like maybe throughout my life because Japanese culture is a lunar cycle based calendar plus the solar based calendar. So we mix them together. Like just like in China as well, in Korea as well, and parts of Southeast Asia, I think we still use a lot of the lunar based calendar, but Japanese calendar and the school systems, as well as some of the celebrations we have, are ritualistic things that we do. It's Shinto based or Buddhist based. Oftentimes the Shinto. Shinto is the Japanese. I wouldn't say it's a religion, but it's a way of celebrating cyclical lunar cycles. That's part of my life, so I was always aware of where the moon was, but not necessarily physically, perhaps, but it was more of a socially and how the calendars were working. And when I moved to the United States and I was still in my late teens, and I remember I was living in the most northern part of Minnesota with a foster home. And it was a very, very difficult time. And it was the time that you couldn't just contact your parents in Japan overseas that easily because the phone calls were, crazy expensive, right? So
Mhm.
my mom would write my sister and myself a little letter sometimes, and we'll send it. And the letters will take like 3 weeks, but she would always remind us that if you see a moon in the sky, it's the same moon that I'm looking at. And, I'm able to say this without tearing up or crying right now, but, it used to really hit hard in my heart because it's this complete loneliness in the most northern part of Minnesota. It's really, really cold. You can probably relate to, where you live. But it's like the one thing that I can look up and say, yeah, I am still connected. And I think that's been a sentiment, not just for myself only, but in throughout the entirety of the human history. The moon has been the mysterious light in the sky that will wane and wax, and sometimes it's brightly shining, sometimes you can't even find it in the sky. I'm sure it created a lot of confusions in people's lives until you begin to recognize the rhythmic things of it behind it. But
Mm.
so that's to answer your question. Yes. Have I always paid attention? As a child, that's how I paid attention. And then I think I fully went into the world of I hate to say it, but the Western mentality where progress is the most important thing. You have to be always doing. There's no really ebb and flow except flow only. Like you are supposed to keep going and be there, be everything, that kind of energy. And the success was defined by how busy you are. And so based on that, I think I have kind of abandoned that rhythm, the cyclical, that there's a time to receive, there's a time to shine, there's time to go inward, there's time to be, soaking in the grace of the darkness. And that's something that I lost over time or lost or had forgotten. I think I packed it away. And what ended up happening was perimenopause hit me, and even though I had been taking care of myself. I'm a functional nutritional therapist. I was doing really well in terms of the diet and doing everything I could. It still kind of got to me, the depression, the anxiety. I didn't suffer too much from the physiological symptoms, but there was some changes that I couldn't really quite figure it out until several years ago, the moon really came to me one night. I was just looking at the moon, beautiful moon, and she said, "Listen, you got to come back to me. You have to come back and get back into the rhythm of things, and you are going to teach this again to the women around you." So that's to answer when did I come back around? I abandoned it for several decades. Then I finally got a wake up call right as I was entering into the full-on menopause. So,
Ah. Oh, I love what you said there, and I can't remember exactly what it was. It was like resting into the darkness of
mm,
right?
the great
Underst
darkness, yeah.
Understanding that there are cycles, that we do have times when we're going, but having other times when we're not. Um, and I know people probably love the idea of it, but they're like, how do I incorporate it? But I remember, Masami, I don't know how old I was when you start learning about the tides and stuff like that in school. I live on an island. Tides are big here, right? But I remember
Yeah,
like, what? The moon controls our tides? How much does our thing that's up in the sky control our tides? Like, it's pretty amazing. And if the moon is like affecting all of that water,
yes.
it's not having no effect on us. Like, how could that possibly be? So, what are some of the effects that
Mhm.
you understand to be within us with the moon?
Right, right. So, and then I think maybe that's the key point, right? So I'm in the process of really digging deep into the science of it because I'm a very spiritually oriented practitioner and I call myself the health intuitive, but I also love the science side of it. So I've been, diving into PubMed every day,
I
looking
love
up what are some of the studies that are coming out. And they are some trickling in finally, but it's as if we have ignored the moon, the she energy, the feminine side, the yin side, the darkness, the importance of you know, really shutting down that quietude, quietude, but also stillness. Like we have forgotten the beauty of that. So there's so many more studies done around circadian rhythm,
yeah.
obviously, and the importance of the solar, the importance of the sunlight. But if you look at it in the feminine and masculine energy, it's very masculine oriented studies that are out there. So the lunar studies are still far in between, it's just really not a huge amount. But I'll give you a couple of really this is I could say that the scientifically has been proven. But what's interesting is that they keep redoing the same kind of studies as if we need more um, ways to, scientifically studies improve it kind of a thing. We all know this that the moon lights will impact your sleep. Okay, so that's been absolutely proven. And during the full moon period, so as waxing moon really increases and then the light starts to increase, the reflective light on the moon, that's when our sleep will get disturbed and more menopausal and postmenopausal you are, and I would even include the perimenopausal time where it gets kind of the cycles get wacky, right? We don't know exactly what cycles you're in anymore internally. That's when the full moon periods, I would say 3 to even 5 days prior to full moon, and I would say 2 to 3 days after that. So about a week of that period, you will decrease in the production of melatonin. And that's been definitely proven. So, I used to be a little bit more like, well, if that's going to happen, then I'm going to fight this and I'm going to make sure I get the eye masks and, darken the shades. And so I still use the darkening shades, but these days I'm a little bit more relaxed about it and say to myself, you know what? It's okay. I will catch up on my sleep. That's one thing about sleep. Not many things can catch up, but the sleep can actually catch up. So I just let those maybe 72 hours of slightly less sleep and maybe more vivid dreams to be the chance for me to dig into who I am, maybe communicate with the different realms of things that I want to be part of, because I don't believe that we're just only human beings and other living beings on earth. I mean, there's so many cosmic level things that we are impacted by. So I still do incorporate 10 milligrams of melatonin, for my sleep regularly, because as you go into menopause, the melatonin production does go down. So that's one of the things. But also that the fluids have been studied, and I'm tying that into the connections with the lymphatic system and the glymphatic system as well. So when the moon is waxing and the light is increasing, the tides of the oceans are also getting impacted, but the tides of your body tends to get impacted. And what happens is that we tend to pull the water upward, and it can make your lymphatic system, that the lymphatic system of the brain, get a little bit clogged up. So that's kind of also coincides with the fact that your sleeping becomes less regular, right? The deep REM cycles may get disturbed, and the nice rhythm isn't quite there for about 72 hours, particularly around the full moon. So that makes sense that the lymphatic system will suffer, or not suffer, but at least have a little congestions that come in.
Mm.
So that's been shown. And the opposite is true with the new moon, is that as the sky becomes darker and the reflective light becomes less and less, we do sleep longer hours, about 45 minutes to about 75 minutes longer than during the time of the waxing and the full moon time. So it's the nature is so perfectly situated that we can catch up to it. So that's also important. That's when we do utilize the darkening of the skies and the shades, and making sure that the if you live near other people's lights or cities, that you don't miss out on this beautiful time to catch up on your sleep. And that's when the production of HGH, like a hormone, human growth hormones, can be up during the deep sleep as well. So utilize it like that. And I also would say, last thing is, another things that's been proven is that based on the moon cycles, our hormones change. And this is very important even for menopausal and postmenopausal women. Yes, we do begin to lose some of the hormones, or we produce less hormones, but we're still in the cycles. We are still producing them. So as we're heading into the new moon, there's a huge drop in estrogen, right? And the progesterone generally goes up a little bit about 5 days before you go into the new moon. So that's a great time. When I work with clients that are using bioidentical hormones, I do recommend that they look into maybe applying a little bit more progesterone cream, or, of course, please talk with your health practitioners and your doctors about the specifics. But if you're my client and if I'm working with you, I will give you recommendations on when to utilize things like estrogen cream or progesterone cream, or when to utilize the support for maybe detoxing xenoestrogen, and so on and so forth. So that's how the moon cycles can become a part of your routine as we go into the second half of our lives.
Mm. So in those congestion times, will we kind of focus a little bit more on doing like lymphatic drainage and stuff like that? Yeah.
You got it. You got it. So as the light is increasing, the fluids move up and you actually accumulate more. So you will have symptoms like edema, right? Your ankles can get a little swollen too, but you may notice more of an upper body edema. So like your eyelids will feel a little bit more puffy. Maybe ear, nose, throat will feel a little bit congested. Maybe tonsils issues will come up. Maybe you get a little bit phlegmy. Yeah. So doing some lymphatic things that you can do. And I'll show you one that's really, really good. So
Great.
this is a Marma points that I use from Ayurveda, because I'm Ayurvedically trained as well. So I'm an Ayurvedic
You got all
cons.
so much knowledge.
Yeah, so it's called the Marma points. It's like a pressure points, but in Ayurveda we call it the Marma points, and it's called the Mohawk points. So it's basically right at the where the hairline starts, right in the middle, and then all throughout the back, like as if you have a mohawk line, right? Mohawk hair. And so that's the area that what you want to pretend is like imagine you're separating an orange, like peeling an orange. Yeah. And I go pretty, um, I wouldn't call it vigorously, but the pressure can be pretty firm here. And that's going to help with the cerebral spinal fluids and the movements of that. And, as many of you know, the CSF is so key to transporting nutrients throughout your body.
Well,
Goes all the way down to your S2, right? So S2 is the connection of so your spine go down all the way to S2, and that's basically kind of the jewel point of the chakra number one, right? So it's a very grounding point. But when you do the Mohawk line and you actually really massage that region around the full moon and then release the congested CSF, that can be a great way to not just rinse out the brain of the debris, the toxicity, your ruminating thoughts. I call it the karmic body, who knows, traumas, everything that gets congested and collected, that can be removed from that. So if you actually look up the maybe anatomy book and things like that, you will see a line here, a
mhm.
very distinctive
Like on a
line.
skull?
Yes, on your skull. That can be it can harden, the fascia get very tight around there. So just loosening that up around the full moon can be really good because CSF is here to nourish our bodies with nutrients, but also for hormonal balance, we need that cerebral spinal fluids to be moving through. So some other tools I would say, I mean, we'll go into the new moon talk because when this is airing in, January 11th, 2024, which is a super numerologically a powerful day, which I can mention a little later. But there are a couple things that you can do is make sure that you are doing those areas so that you can drain. Another thing is to address your sinuses. Okay. So sinus cavities, this region is so directly connected to the health of your brain, right? So the mouth breathing can be very toxic, as you probably know. So I call it the slow and steady breathing, not just like a really fast breathing, and really emphasize the exhale because that's what we need. We're accumulating things here, so we need a support for draining. And doing like a bumblebee breathing, that's the yogic breathing, but just making like a raspberry sounds with your lips, yeah, that can be really good because it will reverberate in your brain. That can break out some of the biofilm productions or, sticky things that's been lodged in your sinuses. That can get into problematic issues during the full moon. So pay attention to that. Next one is like I call it the curiosity muscles. It's called SCM, which are these really giant muscles here.
Yeah,
So
along
turn, you
the
can kind of
or
see that.
pointing along the side of the neck.
Yeah, yeah. Sternal, cleidomastoid. So SCM, these ones. So you can actually pinch them and pull or stroke them gently. That's going to be really good. And the thing is, the SCM, this mastoid muscles, they are such a key element to working with your anxieties and depression and also kind of the overall sense of like unknown, right? Humans don't do well with the unknown, even though the unknown muscles need to get built up so that we can navigate life better. But SCM can be one of those places that you want to soften up and work with because this is the curiosity muscles that will keep your being feeling safe.
Mhm.
So, I'm sure polyvagal theory with Stephen Porges's work. Feeling safe is the prescription, right? That's what he says, right?
Yeah.
Feeling safe is the prescription. But you don't feel safe if your SCM is locked up, and that can kind of show up. So,
Mine is
those
so
are
tender and tight. Like, I definitely need to work on that. And I know it, but I can't seem to, well, I didn't know what I should be doing. And besides
Well,
the
like pinching is really nice, just kind of the skin part, but also just even gently stroking. It's the and then while you're stroking, like I said, this is a curiosity muscle, right? It's when we don't feel safe, this is what locks up. So when you're doing this, you can kind of look around the room, right?
yeah.
Or maybe sit outside if it's not too cold or if you're okay with the elements, and then just look around, and then you're consciously creating this like, oh, isn't that interesting? Or, oh, what if? Or isn't that beautiful? That kind of a sensations, that's what relaxes these.
And
And,
is it important to say things like I'm safe, or is it more curiosity that you mentioned?
I think saying I'm safe is fine, but I think the brain, it's not the brain, but it's your mind has a tendency to complicate things because your mind loves the puzzle. Okay. So when you use the word like I am safe, it can actually create a notion that are you saying that because you're not safe? Right. So you want to almost kind of take yourself out of that kind of a neural connections
Oh,
and say something completely different. Because when you're naturally curious, like children who are naturally curious, they're not worried. They're not worried
right,
about safety, whether they should jump off this little, tree limbs or not, right? I mean, they sometimes should think about it. But in that moment, they're not wondering if I'm going to be safe. So I think it might be better not to use the word safety and
right.
then naturally say, "Oh, isn't that beautiful? Huh, what if I planted that, in next spring, what would come about?" Or just having what if wonderments, right? That can be
Makes
really
sense.
good.
Makes
Mm.
sense, Wasabi. Um, do you like this? You probably do. I only learned about it recently. That's the sphenoid bone that's in behind, it looks like a butterfly that's in behind the eyes, and that's really connected to the cerebral, the flow of the cerebral spinal fluid, right?
Right.
Does any of this affect that bone?
Well, I mean, the bones are always influenced by it, but before we talk about the bones, I think we need to understand the fascial
Yes.
connections, right?
Okay.
Because the bones are now considered to be a part of fascia, which is still a little bit of a radical thinking, but I think that's going to come about as more of a scientific norm is that bones are just kind of like a conglomerate, that when bunch the fascia together, maybe they will become like bones like. So I think what's most important is that your eyes are very active, right? Your eyes are getting the information in this world that we live in. 80 to 85% of your information these days, probably even more since COVID, but you're getting it through the eyesight. So there's a lot of like movements and exhaustions that are going on behind the scenes. And when you are exposed to too much light at night, you're looking at the screens, blue lights, and I'm sure you've done a lot of interviews around this, but it can create congestions. It could become very toxic to your system. So maybe the bones are interesting to take a look at, but also I would say from a fascial standpoint, doing things like rubbing your hands and basically cupping your eyes
Yep.
and
Letting it
closing
get
your
totally dark.
yes, make it completely dark, close your eyelids, and really wait until you see nothing but the darkness through the eyelids. And then you can actually roll your eyeballs up, down, side to side while you have your eyes closed and cupped. And then you could do circles, 360 with your eyes inside eyeballs and relax in a neutral position. And that can be a wonderful practice
Oh,
to
feels good.
address that part of the brain. And you can actually feel if you are tuned in enough and you're quiet and still enough. Let's say if you do that right before you go to bed, or maybe right as you're waking up, also like a bookend practices. I love bookends. Okay. You can actually feel the brain draining that congestion because the movements of the lymphatic system and that fluids make ocean-like waves, like these ocean-like waves throughout the night. So I'm not kidding you. You will hear the swish sometimes.
Wow.
Yeah. And you can hear it more during the particular time of the moon cycles as well.
Okay. When do you hear it more?
I hear it more in the new moon because it's the time that is more naturally draining. So the full
The
moon
full
is
moon is
more
getting congested.
exactly more accumulating. So that's why you have to do these things to support. But the new moon is just naturally everything is coming back down. So historically, too, people like in Japan too, but in Europe too, they would used to cut trees during the new moon period, and they will have a specific day that they have it set, and they will go by the lunar calendar and they will cut particular tree to make a violin, or they will use that for a temple. Like Japan has these ancient temples that they will renew the wood every 24 years. Okay. In some places a little bit longer, but there's a this like a ritual thing that they do. But they will only cut the designated tree on the new moon because it's naturally more drying. So when you cut the tree during the dry period of the moon period, then you will have less infestations or bugs or mold or fungal overgrowth and things like that. So if that's true for the trees, I'm not saying we're trees, but could it be true for us?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where I think it's a little bit of a leap from the science, but that's where I leap and I get a very clear yes on that.
Newfoundland, there was a lot of folklore and stuff here, and they would build boats. And I remember hearing that about the boats. They would go, like, on the new moon or full moon, whatever it was, to get the wood to build the boats for the same kind of reasons. And also planting, right? Planting was always around the moon cycles as well. Like, I mean, even when I first moved to where I live now from the city and our neighbors were telling us when to plant, they said, well, we never plant the seeds until after the first full moon in June. That was always around here. I think it's actually people are planting a little bit sooner now, but yeah, it was around the moon. And another thing that's really interesting, I remember talking to like emergency room nurses, say, or people, police force. They'll say there's always so much more activity around the full moon. Babies, are born more, right? In the full moon. And so it's really, I think, just to not think that we are affected by the moons is kind of, you know, silliness because
It is.
we must be. We must be.
It is. It is. We are very much so. It's just that, like I said, that the science has been based mostly on a circadian rhythm. It's very sun oriented, it's very masculine oriented, just like the hormones of the world, right? The hormones studies been mostly done on 80% of the studies that have come out so far on hormones for women and men have been done on men, right? So I always say to my clients that, we're not male bodies minus the genitalia, right? So that is not who we are. We are very different. Female bodies are very different. And I think that's where science is behind in it. Society might be behind in it. But if you can go back to the human understanding of the lunar cycles, that's where we can get the ancient wisdom back into incorporated into our lives. So, for menopause and postmenopausal women, I encourage you to number one, start just paying attention to don't worry about when the quarter moon is or last quarter moon is or, the varying different shades of the moon. I mean, that's where I study. But first you want to just start knowing when is the moon waxing and when's the moon waning. And that alone can be really, really helpful. And just a little support is that as the moon is going towards the full moon, your estrogen level needs to be supported. Okay. And also, I believe that the prior to supporting the estrogen level, we need to support the detoxification of the xenoestrogen and especially like endocrine disrupting compounds, right? So making sure that you are eliminating some of these things, then begin to support the estrogen using simple things like evening primrose seed oil. That can be really helpful for creating your natural endogenous estrogen. So that could be a great way to support it. And then after the full moon, know that the estrogen level generally begins to go down a little bit, and it's the progesterone's time that comes up. So then you can do other things to support progesterone. And progesterone is, as you know, it's so key to keeping your nervous system at an even keel, making sure that your brain is functioning. I mean, there's so many receptor sites, hormone receptor sites are all over your entire body. So if you're noticing some brain fog after the full moon and you're going towards this dark moon and you're noticing that you're experiencing some fatigue, you might be experiencing something that functional world has always called it the adrenal fatigue, right? Adrenal dysfunction.
Mhm.
The fact is, a lot of the adrenal so-called fatigue is due to the sharp drop in some of these hormones, because it can really cause our brains to fog up, basically. So, those are some of the things that you want to keep in mind through the lunar cycles, even though you're no longer bleeding.
So, okay, we've got as after the new moon, as the moon is waxing into the full moon, that's when
Mhm.
we're going to want to maybe have like a supplement with evening primrose oil. When we get to the full moon, that's where we're going to want to do some drainage and so on. And
Mhm.
that, yes, down at the did you call us the Marma points?
No, this is the Marma points,
Oh,
and
that's
this
okay.
is the SCM, the
SCM.
Kira muscles. Yeah.
Okay, in the net. And then, so what would we do for the progesterone as we're coming out of the full moon and the we're
Yeah, so
wait,
that's when the sunflower seeds or sunflower oil can be really good. I would, just to be, completely transparent and honest with you, I'm not a huge fan of seed cycling. And then some of you might have heard of seed cycling, eating different seeds at a different, times of the moon cycles. The fact is that most of us do not chew these seeds enough, and that even you grind them, they can be really hard for a lot of women to digest, because as we get older, our production of the hydrochloric acid goes down. And so our abilities to digest and break down some of these hard seeds go down also. So I'm more of a fan of using cold pressed oil. So I would do like a sunflower oil. You can even do, sesame seed oil kind of thing as well, but those will be nice to use to support your progesterone, just the natural production of the progesterone.
and
And
take really?
orally, yes, orally. And you can actually even massage some of these oils directly onto your ovaries area, as well, because they can absorb there too. But when you take them orally, I do like capsule forms, just because they do go rancid less often than the ones that come in the liquid. But what you want to do is you put that capsule in your mouth and you bite the capsules,
Oh,
and then let it just melt in your mouth. Yeah, and then you spit the capsule out.
oh,
Okay. Yeah, and then so you just don't swallow that, capsule. And then you just let it melt so the absorption happens in your mouth, because your mouth actually produces enzymes to break down fat. So the most people think that the fat digestion occurs in the stomach and then down in the, duodenum area with the gallbladder and then the liver, right? The bile productions, which is true, but the first line or first stage of fat digestion actually happens in your mouth.
wow.
So that's biting it is a very, very good way. And when you bite them, what happens is that your 10,000 nerve endings and, taste buds, your tongue is the strongest and most active muscle in your entire body, right? So your tongue can detect things, and it's called neurolingual connections. You make quick connections to your hypothalamus and pituitary, and that can send the signals down to the stomach as well. and
Mm.
then begin to produce some enzymes and, digestive enzymes and hydrochloric acid as well. So it's a great thing to do maybe right as you're beginning to eat. Okay. But I've also done it before going to bed. And I can always tell when I need the evening primrose oil. Um, it's when I feel a little dry. So it could be my lips feel dry, my skin feels dry, inner nostrils feel dry, other things like hair, and also vaginal dryness. Then I would definitely go for the evening primrose oil because that has the abilities to help the production of estrogen. Estrogen is what makes us juicy, right? And other oils that are really, really good for estrogen time is flaxseed oil also. But I recommend you don't get the seeds because seeds can go rancid very quickly. So I would get the capsule form. You can also do for progesterone time to do black currant oil also.
Yeah.
So that can be a really nice thing to kind of balance out some of the different, oils that are omega 3s as well as omega 6s. And yeah, so
Oh, interesting. Okay, so we've got some practical tips there. Is there anything else before we wind up? Is there anything else you want to add in, Masami, that people could tie into the lunar cycle? Women, especially, would tie into the lunar cycle.
yeah. Well, since, this is a very auspicious day where this is going to air, right? It's January 11th. So there's this 111 portal that opens up, right? And it's a really a powerful time to celebrate what it is to be. One is also the eye that connects the heaven and earth. So it's a very important time. It's a new moon time to quiet down. I call it the quiet down the noise of the horizontal axis and then create more of the connection between the vertical axis, which is it's your inner knowing. It's you diving into not just, we use the word waking up a lot, but it's a chance for all of us to wake down.
Mhm.
That's what this portal 111 is. And if you're into the numerology a little bit more, I'll just give you a quick thing. Is that 2024? So you add them all up together, it goes to 11.
Yeah.
So plus one plus 2000. So 4. You add them all up and it's 11, right? So this is a powerful new moon. And this kind of marks the ending in a way of the 2023 energy. Okay. So it's important for all of us to just take some time to reflect, time to just sit down with the dark energy, wake down into who you are. This is a beautiful gift that we're given during the time to soak up in darkness, right? Create deep silence, stillness, slowing down. And really, please don't dive into creating new ideas. And because the new moon is often taught as the time to start writing your new wishes and manifestations and your goals. And I've been telling all my clients in the menopausal and postmenopausal women and perimenopausal women to please don't do that during the new moon period, to really honor the silence. This is the liminal time. And for many of us women, we really need to honor about 2 days, a day and a half to 2 days prior to the new moon is called the dark moon. Dark moon is the time when you're not adding more things to do. You're not adding more things that you're going to accomplish. But it's a time of ending. It's a time every month that you reflect and every month that you kind of go back to talking to yourself and say, look how much I've been able to accomplish. Look at how much I've grown. Look at all these things I've learned. I think all of us human beings can use far more time, like conscious period of time where we're not just chasing light and chasing more success, but the time when we can reflect to successes that we've already accomplished and have collected. And that's what's given to us, especially for women around 2 days before the new moon and the new moon day, and then the actual beginning of the month for if you go into like Middle East and people that use lunar calendars, the new part of the month does not actually start until about 2 days after the new moon. When the just a little sliver of light starts to show up on the right hand side of the moon, that's when they consider that point to be the beginning of the month. So I think, every month we're given this chance to dive into who you are and so that you can hear your inner whisper. You can hear your own inner wisdom. And so that's the one more tool that I wanted to give all of us is that light candles, dim the lights, appreciate the darkening of the sky. Because I think many of you might have heard this, but we heal in the darkness. Our cells actually heal from cancer cells when we're in the darkness. And as the cancer cells when the cancer cells basically grow and they begin to become aggressive,
Yeah.
what scientists have said is that they actually shine. Okay. They brighten up.
Wow. Wow.
Okay. So the healing actually happens in the darkness. And I want you to just imagine your animal friends, your dogs, your cats, your maybe horses. When they're injured, what do? They don't go out into the light. They go into the darkest part of your house or a barn or somewhere in the forest sometimes. And they will hide in the darkness and they will curl up because they know that's what heals them.
That
Right.
is that's that's so true and amazing and inspirational. This has been so interesting, Masami. Thank you so much. Okay, I have a question for you that I ask my guests, and that's the show is called Wellness by Design. It's about being intentional, living intentionally. And I think living by the moon cycles is very intentional. But what would you suggest as like a baby step that someone could take today that's going to like initiate that healing? What would you say?
Well, so I think it comes back to what I said it in the maybe middle of our conversations early on is that just become aware. Become aware that there is this lunar energy, the moon that circles around us. There are no other planetary things that loves us so much that circles around us, right? Now I think the NASA and another scientists have agreed that the moon most likely came from a part of the earth that it got hit by some kind of a big rock and then the part of the earth chipped away. So for me, that the moon has the yearning to return and the earth has also the desires, the love for the lunar. And that love and the yearning have been poetically spoken for thousands and thousands of years for a reason. So please become just simply aware of when the new moon is and when the full moon is. And that alone can really begin to shift you because you are beginning to live in harmony with nature and not just nature alone, because the nature is already in harmony with the lunar cycles, but you will become more in tuned with the cosmos.
I love that. I really love that. And you know what? I almost feel like going back and like looking at my sleep cycles and things like that. And, where was the moon when this was happening? And then really paying attention as we go forward. So thank you so much for that. Masami, where can people find you? Where are you most active on a website or
Yeah,
social
so
media?
you can come to masamicovey.com. That's my name.com for the website. I post a lot of things there. And also you can go to YouTube and it's the same thing, Masami Covey, look me up. And then YouTube videos always posted on my homepage as well as soon as I put it up. But I do at least 2 videos per month, depending on the moon cycles. But I'm always recording something for the new moon and something for the full moon. And I will always address the physiological side of how the moon is impacting you. So check me out there. Yeah.
Beautiful. And we'll have all the links there. And I watched some of your videos on YouTube. They're great. Um, and I know you've got a gift that we're going to have a link for. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So I'm super excited for all of you that are watching this. And please join me for the live call. It's recorded as well, but I every year celebrate the Lunar New Year and Lunar New Year, new moon call, basically. And it's navigating the year of the dragons. So this is the wood dragon year, 2024. And it's going to be very different than last year, which was the rabbit year. So year, it's this or a year, it's hard to distinguish those two words, but rabbits was last year, right? So this dragon year is going to be quite different because it's a mythical creature, unlike all the other Chinese zodiac animals. So I will be talking about this for a 1 hour call and what to look for, what are some of the signs. And obviously, I'm going to go through some physical support as well for the dragon year. So please do sign up, and link will be provided. So I will look
Okay.
forward to seeing you there.
What date is that and what time?
That's January 10th. I'm sorry,
Oh,
February 10th. February 10th. The new moon is going to be on the 9th, and the Lunar New Year begins on the 10th. So February 10th, Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern.
okay. And we'll have the link there for that. I signed up because I want to learn from you, Masami. It's so exciting and fun. And also can help us, right? Can really help us live better lives, healthier lives, and in touch with this place where we are too, which a lot of us just have lost touch with place. So thank you so much, Masami, for being a guest on Wellness by Design today and sharing this beautiful body of wisdom and knowledge that you have. So thank you so much for being here. I just love the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank
To all the people watching, listening, I know this has been so inspiring. So check out Masami and the work that she's doing. Get in touch with the lunar cycles again and how are you impacted? Start to notice, and I bet you and I will begin to notice. So if you've liked the show, leave a comment and share it with people who would be interested. And I'll see you again soon.